Never has the title of one of these videos felt so definitive. There are no caveats to be found here. No last days other than that nostalgia run they once booked, or excluding those 2 months where he went heel for the programme against so-and-so. Nothing, nada, zip, zilch. From the day he turned face to the day when he finally decides to hang up his boots, assuming he actually does. I mean, at the end of the day, the guy is a freak of nature. After all, John Cena is never turning heel again. And it's one of the few definitive things we can say about Vince McMahon at this point too. He simply will not do it. As the years passed, it became more pointless to even pitch it or fantasy book it, because McMahon just never seemed to tire of the Super Cena story. I mean, let's face it, he reimagined his entire empire off the back of it. Vince McMahon, of course, as he is with everything ever in WWE, was right there at the beginning in the mix when it all started. When it's not destroying something you love, it's really goddamn funny how much Vince McMahon just hates almost every single thing and person and place in his life. But for all those things and people and places he hates, he absolutely loves, and I mean loves, the babyface gimmick of John Cena, specifically for all the cash it made him and the insanely high bar that it set for every other top guy to follow from that point onwards. And it's those very reasons that highlight just why the chairman had no interest in flipping Cena again once he had at long last become WWE's newest, extremely marketable hero. What's fascinating about that now is just how different things actually used to be, and how quickly Cena managed to change the chairman's perception of him before a career-defining moment in 2002. Vince McMahon wasn't short of a star, even after the WCW invasion of 2001 had collapsed, thanks mostly to his haphazard management of it. If anything, some hefty AOL Time Warner contracts running out, in line with a notable injury recovery, empowered his roster with an energy it had missed during the first full year of his long-desired monopoly. He'd been able to keep The Rock around to cover for Steve Austin's departures, Hulk Hogan was back in the yellow and red and putting people over, no less. Unbelievable scenes, I think we can all agree, and The Undertaker and Triple H hadn't yet extinguished their aura as being top guys with that, how do we put this nicely, very not good King of the Ring main event. Subsequently, at that time, John Cena wasn't exactly filling Vince McMahon's eyes with dollar signs, as he puts it himself. Higher up said, if we're going to put the kid on TV, he's got to meet Vince. They literally dragged me by the arm to Vince's office, threw me in and asked him, what do you think? I had ridiculously ugly, long, super dyed blonde hair that was shaved bald on the sides. He turned around and with a disgusted look on his face said, cut his hair, and I was whisked away from Vince like an assembly line. That was the first time I met Vince McMahon, and he was disgusted to look at me. They shipped me out, and I immediately got a haircut, which was not dyed blonde, but equally as horrible. Now, laughable as most of this is, it's also key to the first chapter of Cena's story. Every WWE superstar of any renown has always emphasized the importance of getting in with the boss, and in 2002, well, John Cena wasn't exactly doing a very good job of it. Famously, he'd feared the chop by October until Stephanie McMahon, catching wind of him rapping on a bus, changed his life and effectively changed the whole industry along with it. Working with Vince was key, and this Cena knew. Getting to spar with him on television was the audience's tell that the young star was rapidly becoming a made man. Was McMahon angry that Cena had sexualized his daughter with a rap? Was he livid that he'd landed a couple of significant blows on his current meal ticket Brock Lesnar, or even that Cena had accepted a spot on a Survivor Series team opposing the Beast? Was he bollocks? But he was absolutely furious when some young punk interrupted him while he was currently in the middle of talking about himself and the rancid sex that he planned to have with Sable. The opening of the November 20th, 2003 edition of SmackDown finds a barely mobile McMahon selling and celebrating his ill-gotten victory over The Undertaker at the Survivor Series, and how said win has empowered him more than ever to put any rival in his or her place. He was unstoppable, invincible, untouchable, and wanted nothing to do with anybody other than the former Playboy cover star, keeping him upright. The opening strains of Cena's original theme subsequently drew a huge pop. Commentators questioned his wisdom as cameras cut to kids holding up weird life and basic thugonomic signs, making it abundantly clear which way the wind was blowing on the gimmick. He acknowledged the Houston locale, made some horrifically dated references about Sable and McMahon's relationship, and threw the microphone up in the air at the end to let the crowd drop an F-bomb. Now, he may have still been trying to play it ice cool, but these weren't the final days of Big Match John as a heel. They were, in fact, the very first days of him as a babyface. Having won the aforementioned Survivor Series match for his side with an FU to the Big Show, no less, and now this, it's fair to say he'd had an eventful week. And yet, just over a month earlier, he was suffering the effects after a beating from the dead man. So how had things changed so fast? Well, the roadmap to John Cena's turn begins in earnest on October 30th, 2003, but so much of it was inevitable from the second he flipped the switch the prior Halloween. The rapping was an instant hit, and the guilty pops emerging from pockets of the crowd were noticeable long before Cena even glanced sideways at a babyface. The company had held off on the turn for as long as possible, but by October 2003, a No Mercy pay-per-view bout with the then babyface Kurt Angle seemed to be dividing the loyalties of the masses. The two had engaged in comedic battle raps in the weeks leading up to the show, but it felt increasingly weaker as material due to how much fans wanted to laugh with Cena rather than at him. Seemingly in an effort to swim against the tide just a tiny bit longer, the company paired him with heels Brock Lesnar and A-Train in TV tag matches on October 2nd and 23rd respectively. But the problem, as nice a problem as it was, persisted. If anything, it became a game of chicken between the company and itself. Somehow, for the first time in forever, they had a commodity that was white hot. And they knew it. The tag matches were expertly agented in presenting Cena as wily and smart rather than just a cheating, mouthy arsehole, foreshadowing for the audience that sooner or later it'd be his fellow villains getting the sharp end of his shtick. That, exquisitely, came on October the 30th. 364 days after saving his career while dressed as a cultural relic at a costume party, John Cena was about to take his career to the next level in a match against a wrestler who looked like one all year round. Michael Hamflett. That is not a very nice way to talk about the A-Train. Now, in fairness, calling a rather hairy A-Train a Wookiee was far from John Cena's sharpest barb, but it was an invitation for the SmackDown fans to get on his back along with the rocket that had firmly been strapped. Especially when, following a defeat to Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit, he planted the future Performance Center coach with an FU. WWE smartly booked Cena to beat Rey Mysterio the following week. Not only was Mysterio perhaps the purest of pure-hearted babyfaces on offer to fool the fans into thinking their new favourite might still be a villain, but it was also a valuable victory. Though mired in some cruiserweight oblivion, Mysterio was still a megastar and far from an easy scalp. Cena had earned the audience's love, but this ensured he had earned their respect too, which was necessary after what followed. Turning away Paul Heyman's slimy offer of a spot on Team Lesnar at Survivor Series, Cena took a beating from the Gang of Giants, which was kickstarted, of course, by A-Train. The fans clamoured for him to reject their offer and pined even more for him to make a comeback against a collection of monsters. The following week, he thrived in a new version of his old role, proving his value to a cynical Chris Benoit as they scored the win in the evening's main event against The Big Show and Brock Lesnar. Benoit and his Survivor Series team captain Kurt Angle might not have trusted him, but they saw his value there and in their eventual victory. Everybody else, Vince McMahon included, did too. Angle, Benoit, Lesnar and others were right there for the right now, but as we'd all come to learn soon enough, the champ was here for good. So there you have it then, those were the last days of heel John Cena. Let us know your thoughts about this video in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and share, hit the old subscribe button if you haven't already. You can find the original article for this at whatculture.com/WWE. That's by Michael Hamflett. Don't forget to read that and tell him how mean he was about poor bloody A-Train. What a lovely guy. Didn't deserve all that slander. You can also follow What Culture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE and follow me on Twitter if that's your thing at It's Adam Nicholas, or if you'd just like some more videos, there should be some just over here. I've been Adam Nicholas, this has been What Culture Wrestling. Sorry A-Train, we'll see you on the next one.